Hey guys, welcome back to the Ask a Muso podcast, brought to you by Yellow Music. I've got one of my favourite Melbourne musos on the other end of the line this evening, and I'm very stoked to introduce him, but I'll let him do a better job of it. Adam, say g'day, mate, and kick us off.
G'day, Bailey. Thanks for having me on the show, mate. I'm looking forward to it.
Tell us a little bit about you. Where did you sort of start music? You're a man of the six strings. How did things sort of kick off for you?
I've been playing guitar since I was about 7 or 8. Got lessons from a great teacher for a number of years. But it was always something that I just did for fun alongside of I went to school and uni and I didn't study any music throughout school or uni. Guitar was just something I did on the side for a bit of fun. And then I joined my first band in my last year of uni and realised that it was awesome. And then sort of did a bit of a 180 and joined more bands. And then I've been doing music now for like 10 years. Here we are. That's the short version of it.
No, but that's crazy though, because you're actually not the first person who said, I didn't do music. Like Dell's brother, John, he didn't get into music until recently either, which sort of blew my mind. He said that, the pair of them grew up in a household that always had musical instruments. But I'm not the first person to actually say that I never did it in school. Yeah. Because for me, having bands in school and such, that was like a big way for me to, I wasn't a footy club kid or a basketball kid. That was the way I made friends, and the way I sort of broadened my circles was through school and cutting my teeth and figuring out that doesn't work. You can't show up to those gigs. You can't play that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's how I figured it out. So how did you sort of get into the band scene, and what was sort of your learning process from there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I always wanted to be in bands, going through school, but I didn't know anyone else that was into music. And the people that I was friends with at school were DJs were the cool thing. And I was really into 70s rock. So and I was the only person I knew that was into that stuff. So I would have joined a band sooner if I'd met other people that wanted to be in a band. But yeah, I just didn't know anyone. So I got into my first musical project was a duo with a mate that I had from school. We were on a camping trip. It's really cliched. We were on a camping trip with some friends and we were sitting around the campfire and there was an acoustic guitar and he started singing and I started playing, and then we were like, oh, this is actually kind of good. Why don't we keep doing this? So we just started playing covers for a while. We were really into Jack Johnson, Bruno Mars, all the beautiful acoustic campfire stuff. And then we started writing songs together. And so we started doing gigs. My first gigs was with this guy, and he's still one of my best friends now. Wilco, shout out if you're listening. And yeah, we would do a mixture of covers and then some original stuff. And then my first proper band, I joined a guy that I knew in high school was walking through the city, I think through Flinders Street Station, if you know Melbourne. And there was a European guy who just moved to Melbourne who was looking for a band. He'd recorded an album back in Brussels and had heard about the Melbourne music scene and made the move down to Melbourne to have a go. And he had a sign up saying, I've just moved from Brussels. I've got a record. I'm looking for a band. And my friend from school walked past and saw him, and they got chatting. And my friend that I'm talking about was a keyboard player. And anyway, he knew that I was looking for a band, and so the mutual friend got us in, and then I joined that band. So that was my first experience gigging with a proper band.
And that's a good experience because he was out of the box ready. He actually had all the bits and pieces. It wasn't okay, we're going to have to play Blink covers whilst we write our first
which
original.
I would have been all right with, but
yeah, you were spoiled for choice, mate. No one has an entry level like that. That's no one's origin story. Yeah. I had a bit of a duo story, campfire. We just started making musical fusion. Then this guy coming back from Brussels. He wants the scene. I meet him at the front of Flinders Street Station. We start a flash mob on Elizabeth Street. Oh, these things happen. Rock and roll, mate.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just serendipitous, I guess. And actually, I lied. That wasn't the first proper band I had. Sorry. The first proper band was with that keyboard player that I was talking about who saw the other guy. He got asked to do this fundraiser gig and he needed a band and he was a singer-songwriter, and then he just called me and a couple of friends just to get together to do this one gig. And then it felt really good, so then we turned that into a band and we kept going. So I lie, actually. Sorry, my first band was the fundraiser gig. Sorry, my first band gig was the fundraiser gig, and then the Flinders Street Station guy happened not long after that. So I had those two bands going for a couple of years.
But that's cool, and I suppose it's the difference with me. Like, growing up on the Mornington Peninsula, there wasn't a lot going on, so if it wasn't in school, there wasn't really much going on. And then you always had to play in Melbourne, you always had to play in the city, and then you just think about the high school limitations. Obviously, during this whole period, you were driving, you were an adult, you were a fully fledged grown up. Whereas for me, when you start in high school stuff, you have to make do with what you can. You have to have those 12 blink covers whilst you write your first original, because that's how you get a fully fledged set. Otherwise, you got nothing.
So did you grow up on the Mornington Peninsula?
Yeah, so I grew up in Dramana. Wow. So Dad and I were members of Dramana Fire Brigade. That was my old stomping ground. So we moved up here in. I always get it mixed up. I believe it's 19. Yeah, I believe it's 2019. It was. Yeah.
Cool.
Actually,
I didn't
we're
know
talking
you were
like.
Victorian.
Oh, well, it's actually the first night I think I actually slept in a bed in Queensland was actually this night 5 years ago, 3rd of June. So it's actually right on that 5 years. So
very cool.
I know. So those, it's just crazy how those. It's interesting. I was chatting to Del about this the other day, and we'll get onto how you know him shortly. But the idea of a lot of people I've connected with that I could have crossed paths with. Like at the same time you're doing your Flinders Street Station story. You know, I'm getting out there and just about to start like uni in a couple of years after that, and all these sorts of things. It's people that you could have walked past, or you could have maybe walked past. You could have passed them at Southern Cross Station whilst you're getting off the train, sort of thing. And then you do full circle, and then you connect in this way, or you connect in a different way. And I always find that quite funny, quite serendipitous as well.
Totally, man. I mean, people talk about the butterfly effect. Like, I think meeting that guy. The Flinders Street Station. His name's Max.
It's getting far too wordy. Let's give him a name. Yeah.
He was really like meeting him was huge for me because he was the first person I'd sort of gotten involved with musically that was taking it really seriously. The duo that I had with my mate from high school, like it was always just a bit of fun for us. Like my friend, he was going down the path of being a graphic designer, so music was just something he did on the side. The other band I had, which started out with the fundraiser gig, everyone else was sort of just doing other things. No one was really pursuing music as like a career path. Whereas once I started doing those gigs, I thought, this is actually so much more enjoyable than what I've been doing at uni. So I want to give this a go. So meeting Max was really exciting for me because he'd made the move like halfway across the world to come to Melbourne because he'd heard all about the Melbourne music scene. And he'd recorded the album and he was just like ready to go. So it was really exciting to work with this guy because I was like, oh my God, I'm in a band where like someone else also wants to like really have a good go at making this work. And
I think that's massive. Like not many people get an opportunity. Like I ridiculed you before about having someone that gives a shit to start off, and that's rare. But like literally it is rare to really see a kindred spirit and be like, you take this seriously. Yeah,
he was all in, man. Like he was out busking. He got me into busking. Like he'd started, I don't know if you've ever been to the Bourke Street Mall in Melbourne, but
absolutely,
I think the busking scene's died off a bit now, but this is going back like 7 years ago. It was really, really popular. And he got in. You have to audition and get a special permit to busk on Bourke Street Mall. And he got in. And then once he was there, I think he'd been there for like 6 months. And he said to me, he's like, man, you've got to go. Like, let's go out busking on Bourke Street. It's a really good way to make money. There was like back then, people had a lot more cash on them, I suppose. And people were still buying CDs as well. So you could actually go out there and do pretty well for yourselves. Plus, it was just a really good way to promote the band. Like he'd printed off all these posters. Like anytime we had a gig coming up, it'd say where the next gig was, the name of the band, all the social medias and things like that. So like he was like really, really all in. It was so exciting for me to be involved with a guy that was that keen to try to make it work.
No, I absolutely get that. And I think I suppose for me, I've never really understood the busking scene as a participant because I just don't play an instrument where that's necessarily been possible, and I never went down that route. But
sure,
what did you sort of do from there? Like is that something you just did for a while in between other things, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it got to a point where me and Max would go out 3 times a week, and I'd been working a couple of like casual jobs. I was in this like interim period where I'd finished uni, I had my degree, and then I took a gap year after uni, with the plan of coming back from my gap year and going back to uni and then doing a postgrad and doing all that sort of stuff. But then when I got back from my gap year, I said to mum and dad, like, hey, I've just joined this band. I think it's really cool. Like, can I just spend a year doing music? And then at the end of it, I'll go back to uni and get a real job. You know, that kind of mentality. Not that music isn't a real job. It's absolutely a real job, but you know what I mean?
That was old Adam. That was previous him. Not today Adam, who knows more now.
My point being, like I would pursue this, you know, I'd do something with my uni degree. Because I didn't, as we said, I didn't study music or anything. So it was just like... Anyway, so I was in this period where I was having a year of trying to become a musician. So I was working casual jobs. And then when I started going busking with Max, like we were going 3 times a week. So I was able to actually quit the casual jobs that I was working and just do music. And then later on, I picked up work as a guitar teacher with Rob, who we both know. And that's another story in itself. But basically the goal was just like to go out and promote the band as much as we could, sell CDs. And anytime we had a gig, as I said, just try to build an audience that way. And it really worked because we started playing gigs around town, and people that had seen us busking on Burke Street would actually come to the shows, and we started to build a fan base that way, which we were pretty stoked with because we always had a pretty tight budget, so we never spent money on PR or promotion, things like that. And we just thought it was, you know, kind of a cool way to be, you know, out promoting the band and actually making money while doing it, rather than spending thousands of dollars on... Again, not to say that PR companies aren't worth it. They're good at what they do, but when you're starting out and you've got no money, like you just can't drop thousands of dollars on a PR campaign. So busking felt like the great alternative because we were actually making money and promoting the band at the same time.
Yeah, that's actually very unique. It's like doing, you know, TikTok stand-up clips for...
Yeah, it's probably... This was pre-TikTok, like, so yeah.
Exactly. So it's like the early way... We did analog TikTok. Everyone watched us only in a 9:16 format. But no, that's a good point. It is like the early equivalent of actually building an organic thing. And the other part of it being an organic thing is there's a tangible connection. Like, you might have a conversation with someone and they're like, fuck yeah, I wouldn't mind coming to that thing. Next time you're doing like a big thing, I reckon I'll come to that. Definitely. And I just thought there's just more validity, more chance of that actually happening.
And it was a pretty exciting time because there was a lot of buskers out there that were doing the same thing. Like Tash Sultana was out busking on Burke Street when we were out there. And obviously Tash's crowds were always massive, but it was so cool to see them set up and just instantly have like 400 people watching them play. I don't know if you know the Pierce brothers, like they were out there busking too. Amistad, this European duo, I think they're back over in Europe now, but they were out, they were busking heaps. There was a number of like bands and artists that were kind of in the early days of their careers building an audience, and artists like Tash Sultana and the Pierce brothers would go on to become these really successful people. So for us to be a part of that was just so exciting because we thought, maybe this could happen to us as well.
Well, yeah, because you'd actually had like case studies. It's like out the front of Roxy in Byron Bay, where the Dregs, you know, there's videos of them playing, you know, Riptide and playing Jack Johnson covers.
Oh, right.
And, you know,
I have to watch
headlining festivals and stuff like that. And that was the whole thing. It's like, this is what is possible.
Oh, cool.
And that's like the Byron Bay equivalent of the hot spot to be busking is like in front of Roxy and that thing. And you get, like, there's not as much room as there is a Burke Street Mall to have such a big crowd. But I just remember going, you know, when I'd go walk home from uni, because I was studying at the old Collarts campus, which was just before it became like sort of, I'm going to explain in fire brigade terms because I'm a nerd, but like when it became Port Melbourne's response area. So it was just before the Montague Street Bridge, but it was on the South Melbourne side. And essentially I'd cross at DFO and then walk through the many, many traffic lights to get there because it was in the industrial area. But then on the way home, you could see everything from some guy like swallowing chainsaws and shit, and you couldn't even move because the crowds were insane. And you get like this bloke, you know, throwing swords and, you know, getting children to throw balloons full of cyanide at his face and stuff on a Tuesday afternoon, and you're like, this is wild.
Big deal. Yeah.
And like that's the thing, that was their entry into that, like, make money but also you get to find out who I am at the same time thing, which is a unique thing.
It was like, it was a win-win kind of thing. Like, I mean, it was hard work going out there for many hours, but like you said, you're making money and promoting your craft.
To go from there to sort of what you're doing now, like when did you, like, I know you said you've had other bands and stuff like that, but like you do your session work, and I know you for doing session work and for being part of the INXS tribute show. What's where did you sort of go from there? What was the next pathway to lead you to where you are now on that front?
I was doing the band thing for a few years. My dream, like once I got involved in bands that I thought were going to do well, I thought, oh, one of these bands will break through and will become famous, and that'll be that. You know, like it was kind of.
That's got Thursday through to Saturday sorted, and then Sunday I'll probably take a day off, and then Monday we'll get back into it.
It was kind of just like an overly simplistic goal of like, you know, my band will get famous, and then that'll be the end of the story. You know, probably a bit naive, but so I was doing the band thing for quite a while, and I had a couple of different bands going, and we were doing little tours around Australia, mostly East Coast stuff. And then it just sort of like, I realized how hard it actually was for a band to get to the point where like you're not just making any money, but like money to sustain the band, and then to think about paying out the band members as well. Like it's insane. Like we would do headline shows and sell like 200 or 300 tickets, which at the time we thought that would be awesome. But then we still realized like, oh, there's just the more the band grows, the more your expenses grow. And it's like, how big does your band have to get before you can actually make any money off it? And while this was happening, I was starting to get a few like occasional calls to do session gigs, where like I would get paid to go to rehearsal. And I just thought, oh, so not only am I going to get like a guaranteed gig fee, I'm going to actually get paid to rehearse as well. And this was completely foreign for me. Not that every session gig is like that, but just when that happened, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then by doing those gigs, I met other session musos that were full-time session players, and it sort of just opened my eyes to that whole other world of I guess being a working musician. And yeah, the bands I was in, like everything started to get a little bit stagnant. There was a lot of stuff going on, you know how it is with bands, like they fall apart for many different reasons. And the bands I was in they were no exception. But I was sort of getting to a point where I was like, I really want to like try to make this work as a musician. I don't think it's going to work if I keep going down this path of being like a band person, or at least not with the bands that I was in. And meanwhile, I was like, these like little session gigs would come through, and then that would lead to something else. And all of a sudden I realized like, oh, maybe I should step away from the band thing and just make myself completely available to take on any session gigs that are going to come my way. Because obviously part of the problem with being locked up in a band is we're not locked up, but being a part of a band is you're not going to say yes to another gig if it's clashing with your band's gig.
Yeah, I think that marriage relationship of being married to a band, I had that. I was like, I knew the other world was out there and stuff, and I'd done stuff, and I'd seen like Dad's experience doing things with tours through TV and seeing, you know, this is, you know, John Farnham's band, you know, this is blah blah's band, you know, that's I was aware that world existed, but I didn't know how to enter it. I think I got maybe I got the wake up call that perhaps the financial situation of the original band that I was going to be married to was not going to come to fruition quite as conducively. But I was like, but I know what the other stream is, but how do I get into that other stream?
Yeah, I don't really know what the answer is on how you do get into that. I think I feel like for me, it was probably just a case of right place, right time, that kind of thing, which is probably the most annoying thing for someone to say. Like, you know, if someone's trying to get into something like being a session musician and say, oh, how do you do it? Like, what's the pathway? I'm sure there's like steps you can take to increase your chances of it happening, but I don't think there's like a really simple answer of like, you don't just sort of decide now I'm a session musician and I wait for the phone to ring.
That's very true.
You know what I mean? Like,
all
I wish it was that.
you can do is hone your craft. Like, you can hone your craft and do your bit and be in control of that. Yeah. But then that's sort of where your control ends.
Totally. I mean, so for me, like, I guess part of it was I decided I'm going to leave the band stuff and just become fully available to anything that comes my way. And yeah, I'm practicing and doing all that sort of stuff. And then I think, I just got lucky. Like, so in 2019 was my first year of becoming a freelance musician. So I was only doing session gigs and I was only teaching freelance as well. And then just little things started to pop up throughout the year. And one of them was Rob calling me to do some fill-in gigs with the Australian INXS tribute band. And I think...
Okay. So it started with just fill-in stuff for the time being?
Pretty much, yeah. I did a couple of tours, like little East Coast runs with different artists that needed a fill-in guitar player. And again, that was just... I got those calls because I'd been doing the Melbourne gig scene for like 4 or 5 years with my originals band. So that's how I was meeting these other people. And then those little session gigs that I did, like a drummer that I did one session gig with, 6 months later, he was in charge of putting together a band for an artist and he needed a guitar player and he thought I'd be a good fit. So he called me. So I guess networking is the answer there. But I know I've never thought myself to be that good at networking, but...
You got to be in it. I've had this conversation a lot of times this season specifically. It seems like a pretty concurrent theme. And the idea is just that you got to, like, you hone your craft like we were just saying, but you got to be about. Like, you got to be amongst it. Because no one's going to call your phone if no one knows where you live and no one knows your phone number. You have to be about. You playing is the best form of about. It's not just going to stuff and shaking hands. It's being on the stage and them going, I wouldn't mind talking to that bloke when he gets down.
Yeah. I think social media is a big part of it too. I'm even now I'm pretty conscious of like posting about gigs and tours and things that I've done on social media because I just see social media as like a digital resume. And I think people do check you out on social media these days. Like it's just I don't know, it's like LinkedIn for musicians, I guess. So
that's very true. So from there, how did your dealings with Rob in the teaching sort of thing? How did that lead into now like the permanent guitar position that you have with the tribute show?
Yeah, again, it was like perfect timing. So I used to work for Rob. Rob runs a guitar teaching school in Melbourne. And his business partner, Michelle, was my guitar teacher. So that's how I had that connection. Again, this is what I mean. I think I just got lucky a couple of times with little things just working out for me. But so Michelle was my teacher growing up, and that's kind of how I knew Rob. We never really knew each other that well, like when I was getting lessons from Michelle, but we knew who. I don't know, we stayed in touch after I stopped having lessons, and then I was looking for work as a teacher. They took me on, so I worked for them for like 4 years. And it was the same sort of thing. At the end of 2018, I was starting to get a little bit busy with touring gigs, and I wanted to like open myself right up to being able to take on anything that came my way. So I stopped working for the music school because they follow like a school term basis, and it's not good when the teachers are going away midterm on tour.
Very true. Yeah. Sorry, my school holidays start on Wednesday. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
So I stopped work. So I quit the bands and I stopped working at the music school. And then I think it was in like April of 2019. At the time, the Australian INXS tribute band were doing lots of cruise ship gigs, and the guy that was in the band, Farron Jones, he got busy doing other things. So there was a couple of cruise gigs, back-to-back cruises. That Farron couldn't do. So I don't know if I was the first person that Rob called, but he called me and said, hey, a couple of cruise gigs coming up. Are you free? Do you want to do them? And I'd heard all about these cruises before, like when I was working for Rob, and they sounded awesome. And the first one was a cruise from Tahiti to Hawaii, 7 days. So it's like, and the cruise company like organizes everything. So I was like, I would get flown from Melbourne to Tahiti, put up for 2 nights in a hotel, join the cruise ship. I think it was a 6 or 7 day cruise, and then fly home at the end of it. And then 3 days later, there was another one, which was India to Malaysia. So when Rob offered me this, I was like, yeah, I'm going to say yes. This is exactly...
This is close to what I was hoping was going to drop in my lap. It's close to looking like this.
This is exactly why I've, cleared the schedule, so to speak, so that I can say yes. So initially, I just came on board as a fill-in. I did those 2 cruises, and then I think Farron did a couple more that year. But then he just got busier doing... He's like a front man in his own right, and he does his own tribute shows. So I think they just got to a point where he was getting really busy doing his shows. So I took over the gig basically. They asked if I wanted to take on the role, and I said, yeah, absolutely. So, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. That's how I've seen you on the in the traps and when you come up here and stuff and playing shows and stuff. And then when we did stuff up in Ellie Beach, and it's been a pleasure to get to know all you guys. Like obviously meeting Rob for essentially a fill-in thing myself when we were playing the Delacoma stuff for an opportunity to open for the Pumpkins back in 23, and that whole sort of community of his network and the people in the band and how you guys all interact has been fantastic to get to know and to understand better from looking at it, living vicariously through people's social media as you do. Like you said, you do check people out. You do. That's, it's those sorts of things that help sort of get a connection. There's a lot of people that I've spoken to and teed up podcasts with and teed up other things with that, cool. You don't meet until 2 years down the track and stuff like that. So it's been cool to see what you're doing there. And I suppose without necessarily going into the semantics of the actual show itself, which for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's fucking bonkers. And it is the best of the business in this format because it is the Wembley style show no matter what stage they're playing it on. You're doing theatres, you're doing all that cool stuff. I want to understand from you, Adam, the theatres and the stuff you're doing there with the Excess tribute show and Dell's Antics, and then stuff like Maple Glider and stuff, which there is cool things we can talk about there. But before we get into what that's going to be, just pub scene, the theatre stuff. Everyone complaining that the music scene's going to be done by Saturday week. What are your thoughts on that? I really want to know what you think about where the music scene's at.
So what's strange for me, like I'm busier now than I've ever been as a touring session musician, whatever you want to call it. So for me, it's like when I hear people say that the music scene's dying and it's getting smaller and worse, I understand what they're saying, but for me, that's just not my experience at all. Like it's the opposite. It feels like it's just, I'm getting a lot of opportunities, like way more than I had like 5 years ago. So I don't know. I mean, I'm really lucky. Like I'm getting heaps of work. Like with the Australian Excess tribute band is keeping me super busy. Maple Glider, as you mentioned, doing a bit of touring with, and then I do cover gigs and wedding gigs like everyone else. So I don't know. I can understand why people might think that things are getting smaller. Like there's a lot of venues that are struggling and they're shutting down. There's probably not as much money in music as there was in the 90s and the early 2000s. But again, I wasn't around then, so it's really hard for me to say like, oh yeah, it's getting worse, because my experience has only been like what it is right now. And for the last it's really been like the last 2 or 3 years that things have really gotten to where they are for me. Like before the pandemic, like in 2019, when I was getting going as a session player, like I wasn't super busy, throughout that whole year. I had the 2 cruises with Rob, some other little things, but like I'm just way busier now than I was back then. So I don't know really if I can comment on like which way the music scene's going, because for me, like it seems like it's going, it's busy.
I get that. I think the thing is, it's a priorities thing. That's for sure. Whether it's a priorities thing that individuals are setting for themselves or are finding have been set for them through different cost pressures and stuff like that. But I think definitely the intent to consume, there's still a hell of a lot of people that have a strong one. Like really want to be amongst it. Like
for sure.
The numbers on how many shows are getting to that sold out or are at sold out that you've done on the INXS tour. But like the one at Noosa. Yeah, that was
not
a spare seat in the joint.
That was a good one.
Those sorts of things.
That was pumping.
There's people like I know I was there. That's why it was good. But no, the idea of the whole show thing is like you're selling them out. Like they're moving. People are doing stuff.
Yeah, and I think one thing I should point out as well is like I've started doing a lot more cover work in the last couple of years, which when I was getting going in music, like doing the band thing, I was like a bit snooty about cover gigs. I always thought like, I'm too good to do that. But like now in the last few years, like I've taken on cover gigs, and there's so much work in the cover scene. Like I'm not sure what it's like where you are, but in Melbourne there is like you can play cover gigs every night of the week, and they're really well paid gigs. So there are opportunities out there. Like it's not just about playing your favorite songs all the time, or like you might have written a song in your bedroom that you think, oh, this is so cool. Like why isn't more people listening to it? Like we've all been there. But there's just ways to do gigs and to keep the ball rolling. Like honestly, some of the best musicians I've played with have been in cover bands, because like you have to be really good at your craft to get work in a cover band. Like you have to be a really good drummer, you have to be a really good singer, a really good keys player, bass player, whatever, because you're covering so many different decades of pop music. So it's not just like strumming 4 chords, you know, all night long. Like, there's just such a wide range of stuff. So
absolutely, that's definitely true. And another thing that I noticed that you just sort of solidified in my brain a little bit then was the idea that especially when you, like, I know you had some good things, it wasn't all doom and gloom, but some people like work shit stuff they don't want to do, they work jobs they don't want to do, and it's all so they can do their craft, and I get that, but I think there's almost an element of man, I've worked so many jobs I don't want to do anymore, I've already done my sacrifice, so now I don't want to play Sweet Caroline. It's like, okay, but there's not like a line where you go, oh, we don't have to do compromise anymore.
Yeah,
just whatever you want to do, it's locked in. There's still going to be a little bit of compromise. Do you really enjoy playing your instrument?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. It's easy to look at like the superstars. Like you might think, oh, you know, the guy that got the rhythm guitar gig at Guns N' Roses, like how cool is that being Guns N' Roses rhythm guitar player? But like there's not that many opportunities to do that type of gig, right? So if you want to make a living playing your instrument, you've got to compromise a little bit for sure. And the alternative is like, you know, working a job that you might not like. I mean, Sweet Caroline, you know, we're all sick of that song, but it only goes for 3.5 minutes.
That's such a good take. It's like a scorching hot take. Every time I think, yeah, well, how many times do you have to play Riptide? Well, you'd have to play it 27 times for it to be as long as, you know, the first morning of your day at work.
Luckily for me,
puts it into perspective. No. Tell me about Maple Glider then. Tell me about the original side of things. What are you guys doing? And yeah, the big tour opportunity. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So Tori is the artist behind Maple Glider, and I've been playing for her for about just over 3 years now. And she's put out a couple of albums. She put out her first record in, I think it was 2021. And then her second album came out last year. So she's got 2 albums out, and they've both done, the first album in particular went really, really well. So I think that was a bit of a breakthrough record for her. And we've just been doing sort of constant touring for the last 2 years, mixture of festivals and headline shows. And obviously the big announcement is we're heading over to Europe in a few months for, I think it's like a 3.5 week run of shows throughout the UK and Europe. I think there's 12 shows that are locked in, and there's another 4 that are in the works. So it could be a 16 show tour if it all comes together. So that's been really exciting working with her.
That's sick. So what's the style of music? What tell the people what are you playing? What sort of stuff are you playing in there?
I would call it indie folk music. Like it's the music's Tori's got just the most amazing voice, and she played like most of her songs are her on acoustic guitar doing finger picking or light strumming, and the instrumentation is sort of builds around that. So I'm in the band playing electric guitar and acoustic guitar and doing backing vocals. But then there's a keyboard player, Bridget, who also does backing vocals, and then drums and bass. And it's, I don't know, it's kind of like indie folk with a lot of ethereal elements to it. Is my best way of describing it. That's
very poetic. That's nice. Well, I was actually, that leads me to something else I wanted to know. I know my own experience of this, but did you just start singing the BVs born out of necessity? Or did you go, I think I want to expand my range? Or did you just went, I guess I'm doing this?
Totally out of necessity, yeah. Joining Rob's In Excess tribute band. When I got the gig, it wasn't even like a question of like, do you sing? It was like, so this is what you have to sing.
Strap in, boys.
Which was stressful at the time, but actually great, because up until that point, I'd always thought, I was like, no, I don't sing. Like I've got a terrible voice. I've got an older sister who said I was tone deaf, And
I've got proof, Mum.
Yeah.
I suck.
Oh yeah, it's good having an older sister, isn't it? But
they really ground you, don't they?
No, it's great. She's awesome. But so I was like, no, I don't sing. I'm terrified of singing. Like, it's not my thing. I'll play guitar, and that's all I'm going to do. And then, In Excess show, we're like, no, everyone has to sing. And they had like specific harmonies and backing vocal parts that I just had to learn. So they just sent them to me, and I was like, yeah, I can do that. And to be honest, I was probably really crap like the first few gigs that I did with them because I was terrified and I didn't know what I was doing. But eventually you're just learning by doing, and you build up your confidence. And it seems like confidence is maybe one of the biggest. I mean, I'm not like a lead singer, but I feel like if you're confident in your singing, you're going to sound better than when you're not confident. And the only way to get confident is just to keep doing it. It's like learning anything. So yeah, in excesso, and it was good because by the time I got the gig with Maple Glider, again, a big part of that gig is singing backing vocals and harmonies. And by that point, I felt like I had actually learned how to sing properly. So I was confident to say to Tori, like, yes, I can sing backing vocals for you. Because that was something she asked me, like, in the early days of me joining the project. Like, can you be the guitar player, but do you know how to sing harmonies and backing vocals? And I was like, yes.
Yes, I can do that now. I'm not phoning it in. I'm fully, I can fully do it. Yeah.
And I think, like, to be honest, I think with that gig, the singing is probably more important than the guitar playing.
It's not buried.
No,
you're not building the wall of sound. You are orchestrating an important part that would sound missing if it wasn't there.
Especially live as well. Like, we tweak the harmony. So obviously Tori's the lead singer, and then Bridget, who plays keys, she's the other singer. So we've tweaked the vocals a little bit live so that there's more defined, like, 3-part harmonies. And yeah, you definitely have to, like, feel confident in your abilities as a singer to bust out a 3-part harmony, because the hardest thing I found when I was learning was, like, I would learn my harmony part, and then I'd hear someone else sing, and I'd just get distracted by what the other person is singing, and I'd just start copying them, and it took so long to get past that.
That's so true.
Yeah, and so you do some singing as well, right?
Yeah. So I've that started for me, same sort of thing, when I was actually in primary school. Because in primary school, you know, the teachers and such, they just give, everyone gets a go sort of at everything if you're keen enough. And I started a band in grade 5 that was the first sort of band that had been started, like a rock band, something that had been out of the sort of curriculum, because grade 6 did have a rock band that you could be a part of.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, well, I'm in a position where I don't want to wait a year. I got some ideas. So we did that, and I ended up singing lead on a couple of things as well. And,
cool.
And I just was like, well, I want to sing some stuff, because why not? Who knows if it's rubbish? I always did choir in primary school. Maybe that's where I came from. And then I was like, well, I play drums, so I just have to figure out where the mic stand goes. And I didn't realize that was actually difficult. And that's not...
where does it go?
Like such a cockhead thing to say. I didn't realize that was hard. But, like, I went... I want to do a thing.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at the drums. This is an extension of that. I have to figure out where the mic stand goes. I guess I have to figure that out. Rather than, drumming and singing, that's hard. I hadn't done enough to know what was hard yet, because I found everything difficult, because I had only been playing drums for like 8 months. So I was everything's hard. So
just
what's the difference?
Figure it out.
And I suppose, by figuring it out and just sort of riffing it whilst I was in primary school, and then in this indie band, which like the band that we did in grade 6 and stuff, I had an opportunity to sing lead. And I remember there's a horrible video of me singing Yellow. And I was like, it's just like, no, Adam, it's not on YouTube, mate. It's on a hard drive that only myself and Erin know the location of, okay? So unless you come and rob my house, you'll never see it. 100 likes, and this will be, and I'll show you. But no, so the
like
video, and also I'm wearing like this fucking funny hat and funny glass. Oh, it's a whole thing. But yeah, so I was doing that at our like country fair sort of thing at school. And then from there, every time I was in a band, I just sort of offered. In a certain way. And then I was in like pop punk bands in early high school and stuff, and I just sort of offered to do harmony bits or those sorts of things. And then from there I was happy to sort of market myself as someone that was happy to do that. And I just, whether it's a confidence thing like you said, or whether it's what someone specifically asked, I just found that people wanted someone else to sing, and no one up the front other than the man up the front or the gal up the front were interested. So I was like, well, I guess it's me.
Yeah, cool.
I guess I'm doing it then. And then like skip ahead now with the Justice Trio, the stuff I do with John, like some of the harmony parts we have are really big focal points. Like they're very much, like some of them we strip it back to the point where it's just the guitar and me and him doing this note.
Oh, okay.
And I've had to really forget that distraction thing. Really had to unlearn that, which is the only thing you can't learn by yourself.
Well, yeah, that's what's so hard about it, right? You're at home practicing.
Because the other thing I've learned is I have to do this. Like for audio listeners, I have to move my head to the left when I practice. Because if I sing and play drums like this and practice, that's not practicing. Because on the night, the mic's going to be to my left. Yeah, so I have to practice it like this and had to get used to that like alignment of my body sitting down. So those sorts of things I could practice, but you can't practice with the other person's note.
I was going to ask if it's hard to sing and play drums at the same time. Like anytime I watch a drummer sing, I think, how do you do that? The coordination.
The thing is, I figured out that I'm much better at drums than I am at singing. So I was like, well, how am I gonna figure out my priority spectrum here? And that is always practice with my head turned so that it's accurate. Practice how you play. And the other thing is get so good at drums that I don't need to watch myself play. So that I can just focus on the mic. That's where I've had the benefit, because if everything else is working, all other four limbs are working as they need to, then I can do this. Now, I'll still never understand how Sting can play syncopated bass parts and sing. I've never understood that. The Police are an enigma to me. But I know how to do my bit to just be focused on not really having to pay attention to what my arms and legs are doing and then do the singing.
Because that's the hardest thing. Like when you got to sing something and it's syncopated with what you're playing. Like I find that on guitar. I mean, every now and then I have to learn a thing. I'm like, this doesn't work because the rhythm I'm playing is different to what I'm singing, and how does this happen?
And also, I've got to watch, because I don't know how, I'm not fully au fait on how to play it yet.
Yeah. John Mayer's a really good one. You know his song Neon?
Yes.
That riff is so fucking hard to play. He plays it and sings on top of it. That just blows my mind. Like, if people have their thoughts on John Mayer, and that's fine, but fuck me, he's a good musician.
Instead of looking up videos of me when I was in grade 6 on YouTube, look up him playing Neon live. That's something worth watching.
That is insane.
Some real talent.
Try to learn first of all, just try to learn how to play that riff, and then try to sing while you play it. It's insane. It's so...
Yeah, there are so many moving parts to that.
Yeah. So, big respect.
Yeah, well, what's happening next for you then? Like, wrap us up. Tell the lovely people where they can find you, but what's next for Adam? What are you working towards?
I'm back on the road with the In Excess tribute band this weekend. So we're playing Bundaberg and Rockhampton. I can't remember the order. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'll put up put up that beautiful poster that you were telling me about. I'll put it up right next to your head.
Have you got it? Did it come through?
Hopefully by the time everyone's watching this, it'll be a poster. Otherwise, I'll just be getting a bit of a crayon. Poster somewhere.
Yeah, we've got a lot of shows coming up with the In Excess tribute band. So we're Queensland next weekend, and then a few weeks after that, we're off to WA doing some shows with a U2 tribute band. It's like a double header. So I think we're playing Perth and Bunbury. Again, the poster can confirm. I'm not a very good...
Will do all the heavy lifting.
I'm terrible at marketing stuff. I should know this stuff off the top of my head, but I just know that Google Calendar knows, so that's I know when I have to get to the airport, and that's great. But yes, In Excess show stuff, few cover gigs here and there, and then I think the Maple Glider tour is probably the next big thing after that, which is we leave... I think we're going on the 26th of August, flying into Dublin. And there's more In Excess show gigs before then. We're always touring with that band. The guys are just booking like crazy. So
yeah, no, perfect. Well, exactly. So there's no excuse for you to miss Adam dressed up in all white.
Yeah.
Shredding his stuff, having a good time.
Leather jacket too, mate. Don't forget that.
Exactly. Oh, sorry. My bad. Sorry. I was going to leave a little bit to the imagination. Let the people have something to look forward to.
Sorry, I'm new to this podcast thing.
Fucking mate. Need You Tonight's going to have a bit of a poor twinge. I've seen this before, mate. I already knew when the jacket was going to be on and off. Well, mate, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for having a chat. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Mate. Yeah, it's been fun.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
So, where can the lovely people find you on your internet resume, as you so correctly said?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on the Instagram, just adam.j.heath. I've got a YouTube channel too, if people are so inclined. It's just me playing my favourite guitar solos.
Perfect.
Just search Adam Heath on YouTube, and that's about it. There's no TikTok or anything, or Twitter, or X. Sorry, it's called X now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, good man, man. I'm not on TikTok either. I just I feel that's what the kids are doing, but I don't have the time for another platform, to be honest. Between all the bands I do socials for and playing, I don't have time for TikTok, mate. I gotta go to work.
No, Instagram's the main one. If people want it, that's where I post all of my goings on. So if people want to find me there, that'll be the way to do it.
Beautiful. Well, guys, that is another episode of the Ask Muso podcast. Adam's a champ. He's one of the best shredders I've seen play, especially down south. And he's giggling over that because he knows that I mean it. But yeah, no, you know where to find these guys. You can find him down in Melbourne, and you can find these episodes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You know the drill. And as always, until next time, I'll see you later.